Hello everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to talk about filtration. We're trying to determine how much filtration do I need for an aquarium. Realize that everything in an aquarium ends up becoming filtration. A rock in there. That rock will grow bacteria and will become part of your filtration. That's how saltwater works. Lots of live rock is your filtration source. Well, we have that going on in freshwater too. So even though I got rid of my 300-gallon sump and my above tank sump, I still have a bunch of biological filtration going on in the sand, on the logs. I've got plant filtration, so that's a little bit of chemical filtration. What I didn't have going on is a bunch of mechanical. Now I've added a bunch of mechanical filtration. This is a bunch of filtration pads, and we're going to add a bunch of bio rings and crushed coral and other things to up my biological. But I want to start with, where do we think we need to go with filtration? You know, unfortunately, I've been doing this for 12 years or something like that. I still don't have a rule of, you have this many gallons of water, you need this many bio rings, or you need this many bio balls, or you need this much sponge. And I think that doesn't work because it's not about how many gallons of water is in the aquarium, it's about how much fish load is in the aquarium. And it's really hard to go, well, 3 clown loaches equals this. Like that's not going to translate to every fish keeper, right? And what if your clown loach is this big or it's this big? So I think that's why there's a lot of confusion, is there's no easy way. And so the best analogy I could think of was kind of like trying to buy a car. You could buy a bicycle, you could buy a motorcycle, you could buy a sports car that only has 2 seats, Toyota Camry that's kind of like a 4-door, seats 4, maybe you could squish in 5, and you can keep going up from there. If you're just going to work every day and it's one person, maybe you don't need the minivan, right? Obviously you can drive a semi-truck or an entire school bus to work and back every day, but that might not be a good investment of your money. It might be bad for the environment. It might be hard to park. It might be all these things, right? So try and get the best fit for our overall lifestyle. And maybe in America, for a lot of people, that 4-door car really makes a lot of sense for most people. And that might be the equivalent of like a hang-on back filter or a canister filter. Something in that realm might be that 4-door car. Yeah, it'll handle it. I can load stuff up. I can get a few people in there and that type of thing. So I thought we would start with maybe looking at like what a canister filter does. So we've got the FX6 here. It's got sponges all the way around the outside. We've got a fine polishing pad up top, which is basically sponge. And then we've got bio rings inside of it. It's a 5-gallon bucket essentially, filled to the brim, 60-70% biological, 30% mechanical. It's not super fine. And I've seen this run on tanks all the way as small as 55 gallons to as large as 300 gallons solo. You can see here, these are how the baskets are set up. They've got all the sponge around the outside, bio rings, some sponge up top, and a little bit of a coarse pad down below. They make use of pretty much the entire space. Where hang-on back filters, a lot of times when you slide in just a cartridge, so if you're sliding in just a cartridge filter in your hang-on back, then there's all that extra room ahead of it and behind it that's not being utilized. That's why in some of the videos I've done in the past where you hot rod it, as I call it, with like an intake sponge. So this is a very coarse sponge. I don't know if you guys can see how coarse it is. So I put these on the intakes of hang-on backs and canister filters and that type of thing. This is a first line of defense. It's a pre-filter, and it catches a lot of gunk for you and keeps your canister or your hang-on back clean. It adds a lot of surface area. Kind of the next segment, I guess, of this, how much filtration do I need, is how do I know what's way too much? I wanted to take a look at this picture. So this is I think it's a 180-gallon aquarium here. We're on monsterfishkeepers.com. This is just someone's aquarium. I don't know them. I don't know the entire details. But what I can see is there's basically one flower horn living in this 180-gallon aquarium, right? One FX5 or FX6. It could be either one. There's one of those there, 2, 3, and a 406. So there's 4 canisters on this 180-gallon aquarium. It might be as small as a 125. I can't know just from this picture. We've got what appears to be, let's say, a foot-long fish in there, and like at my store, I have a 360-gallon aquarium running just one of those, and maybe something the size of that 406. Over double the filtration on this aquarium that has half as many gallons of water and probably less of a fish load than I have. And I feel like this is too much. It's kind of like if you own 4 cars and you are a solo person at your house, no matter what, you can only drive one of them. Yes, you could drive any one you wanted, but the ability for you to drive more than one at the same time is impossible. And the same thing happens when it comes to filtration. If you have a smaller bio load, if I have enough bacteria to populate one of these and I'm running 20 of them, I'm basically wasting probably about 18 of them. And the reason I say 18 is because if my fish gets bigger, I add more fish, maybe I would start needing the second one. But I've got 20 of them. Let's say I did have 20 of this sponge. It doesn't just fill up one and then start on another one. What it does is it puts a little bit of bacteria grows on every single one. Now there are some benefits to that. Let's say this was a canister filter and I had another canister filter. If I have 50% full here and 50% full here, and this impeller dies or it breaks, I still have 50% of my filtration over on this side. So that's helpful. And the problem is a lot of times we don't factor in the fact of gravel and the glass. The glass is going to grow bacteria, the airline tubing. There's so many things, the fake plastic plants, the live plants, the wood. One company might say this filter handles 75 gallons, and then something the exact same size will handle 50 gallons from another company. And that's because they're, just like I haven't figured it out, no one's really figured it out, and there's no standard that says, like, no one can tell me, what does this filter? Is it 10 gallons? Is it 100 gallons? Is it 50 gallons? So being that there's no standard, you can kind of make any claim you want. I can claim this will handle a 500-gallon aquarium, and until someone can prove me wrong, it kind of just stands. Let's say it was this 800-gallon. Let's say I could say this sponge handles 800 gallons of water, and there was 6 neon tetras in there. Technically, it's doing it. So that's why we like to pair how much fish load versus how much filtration. This big sponge filter did not have a rating on it when I bought it, so who knows what it's supposed to handle, but I know something 1/10 the size is supposed to handle 125 gallons. If you can see on here, I don't know if it'll come across, but this is much, much, much finer foam. It's gonna clog up a lot faster, but it also will filter out lots of fine particles. Last thing I had here was a bag of bio rings. You can add them to almost anything. Whenever you add media, sponge, whatever it is, you're technically going to reduce flow. You have flow on one hand, bacteria on the other. Now if you have tons and tons of bacteria, you don't need nearly as much flow, because once it passes through, it will be clean on the other side. If you have tons and tons of flow, but not much bacteria, it might have to go around 6-7 times before you can scrub it clean. So ideally, you're kind of trying to do this move, right? It's moving at an appropriate level, my fish are okay, and it's scrubbing it clean. And so I like bio rings and sponge because you can kind of keep adding a little bit. You could just take a handful and be like, well, let me put a handful and then hang on back. See how that goes.
We hope you enjoyed this video. To watch another one just like this, click here.